Now let's get back to Iran and other security issues. Joining us on that is Reserves Brigadier General Relik Shafir. He's one of Israel's legendary Top Gun air aces, and he's also former commander of the Tel Nof Air Force Base. From Europe, we have Perez Shakdam. She's an Iran affairs expert and executive director of the organization We Believe in Israel. Relik, Catherine, thank you for joining us. Relik, I want to start with you. Iran is so far, or the leadership, the regime, has shown some resilience against the ongoing air campaign by the U.S. And before that by the U.S. and Israel together. Now President Trump is threatening to escalate that campaign, for example, aiming at bridges and power plants, civilian infrastructure. How effective do you think that can be going forward in attempting to try to get, to first of all, bring Iran back to the negotiating table, never mind even just getting concessions from it?
Well, we must go back a few years to 1988 when Ayatollah Khomeini decided to end the war with Iraq after having lost about 1 million people and sending kids to blow landmines. And he reached a conclusion that they cannot go on, and wrote to his generals that he has to give up the fighting now, but told them that they need a weapon of leverage. That weapon of leverage is the nuclear program that we all know. And I think until the moment that the IRGC or Mujtaba, if he is active at all, reach that stage or understand that the public cannot tolerate anymore, they won't give up. So the power plants, the energy, and darkening Isfahan and Tehran are part and parcel of letting the regime acquiesce to the pressure. It won't happen before that. And they will use whatever power they can to leverage on the Gulf states, hoping that Trump will not bolster the military onslaught prior to the elections in November.
Right. Well, Catherine, I want to get your view. You know, the Iranian leadership, how would they react to that? And also maybe address the issue. The U.S. President Trump has been reluctant, it would seem, until this point, to attack, for example, power stations. He actually kind of berated Israel for taking such a strike during the first phase of the war. There have been those who argue that you want to try to separate the regime from the Iranian people, and taking such action could impact more on the civilian population. Where do you come down on that?
I think we're looking at it the wrong way. Iranians clearly want a change of regime. They cannot tolerate the mullahs any longer. What we need right now, and look, I agree, bombing, bridges and whatnot, yes, it will help. It will help. Military speaking, is the right thing to do. However, if you want to achieve regime change, and I believe that we all do, we want to see the back of those people, you have to give them a dream, a future they can connect with in order for them to go and get it. The problem so far, there is no leadership as such, not inside the country. Now, the leadership that exists in Iran, and we continue to avoid the elephant in the room, is Reza Shah. And why I'm going back to Reza Shah? For one simple reason. When people are pushed past the point of breaking and desperation, and despair has become the fate of Iranians in the diaspora and within the country, people look back in their history to find a way, a hope, a light that they can hold on to and claim for themselves, hoping that it will be their future. Now, Reza Shah represents Persia, Cyrus the Great, the legacy that this nation has given the world. They have been replaced and the light has been turned off by the mullahs. So doing one thing, which is to destroy the regime, and we're doing it well, fine, great. But what do you replace it with? Until Iranians can feel that there is a future for them to get, they won't risk their life and pay the ultimate price. What we need today is for people to rise up and go get, and we talked about this many times, to ask them to face the ISGC and the besieged and everyone else in between. The regime has built and architected a little house of horror for those people to be willing to go barehanded to destroy the real infrastructure of the regime and actually stand against its ideology is too much unless you give them a leadership that they could get behind to. So I think that what we need to gift Iranians is not just bombs and blowing up the nation that we're doing already, is a dream that they can do with us. And it's important, and we keep failing to do it. The politics of it are fine, the military of it are fine, but you need to destroy this ideology and create a future they can see, they can taste and touch so that they could manifest it. And it may sound philosophical, but until you do, you cannot have a revolution, and we need one.
To that point in a bit, Catherine, but I want to go back to Relik, continue on from some of the comments that President Trump has made in the past couple of days. Another one is indicating a possible airstrike. I'm not sure why you would give this warning to the Iranians, but signaling a possible airstrike against the Pickaxe nuclear facility, which supposedly is buried even deeper than that of Fordo. Certainly it's under a bigger mountain. It's not clear what is there. You've taken part in some sensitive air operations against hard targets. Some we know about, some we may not know about. How likely is something like that capable of doing, if we're talking, even considering that to this point we still don't exactly know how successful or effective the strike against Fordo was?
Well, some of the nuclear program is buried pretty deep in the hills, as are some of the ballistic missile sites. Now, these need pounding by B-2s with their 30,000-pound bombs that are much larger than the ones deployed by fighter aircraft, which at most are about 2,000 pounds. So just to make the comparison, 30,000 versus 2,000, these bunker busters can be used against one of the, or some of the 33 nuclear facilities, including the centrifuges, et cetera, et cetera. Now that may take quite some time because it'll need quite a few bombs. And the BDA, what we call is the damage assessment, is not that easy because those bombs go down to about 200 feet below the ground before they explode, and you don't really see above the ground what the results are. It's a mini earthquake type. So deploying these will really push the nuclear program back, and going after the energy sites will push Iran really back. They'll need quite a few years to rebuild. I think the United States was not interested in this, but if they start these kind of attacks and then accelerate and promise to accelerate, that'll be a warning that can leverage the IRGC and the Iranian leaders into some kind of capitulation or receding on their aggression. And I'm afraid, understanding the zealots that sit in Tehran, I guess it's the only country where real zealots are commanding the regime in the world, and having seen what it looks like or how those zealots think, this is the only way. The question is, can the United States do this and still keep a low profile? That is, no soldiers are getting killed. It won't interfere with the November elections. It's not an easy game to play, but I think the United States, at least what we see now, it's not hitting the headlines too much, and maybe they can continue this and accelerate without really causing the voters come November use this as a leverage against the Republicans and Trump.
Right, but as Catherine said, it'll use all that military might, really may not achieve it end unless there is some kind of planning or future for some kind of alternative regime. And Catherine, I want to ask you about that because just yesterday, new details came out about a supposed alleged scheme by the Mossad and I guess with U.S. intelligence cooperation to effect, I don't know if you would call it regime change, it's incredible, to bring Mahmoud Ahmadinejad back into power, but supposedly a reformed one that has met with Israeli officials, met with the Mossad director. Apparently it did not go as planned. Again, we don't know how much of this is accurate, but I just want to get your response. When you heard about it, do you think this plan was even plausible to begin with? Is this something that should have been done by Israel and the United States, including, for example, now some confirmation it involved the Kurdish rebels as well?
Okay, I'm going to give you a very short answer. Is no. I think that this gentleman is completely insane. I met him. He wasn't a great fan of me after I came out and explained that, ta-da, there was a Jew around. He wanted to write several fatwas against me. So personally, I'm not a fan of the guy. If you recall, there was an interview that he's done a few years ago where he was explaining that he was having daily conversation with Mahdi. So I'm like, okay, Mahdi being the prophet or Messiah that they're waiting for. In any case, he's talking to a guy that doesn't exist yet. So I'm not quite sure how that works. But that's fine. So I'm not sure that he's all there mentally. I don't think that someone who was a raging lunatic while in power would be the best option for change. But this is just me talking. I very much doubt it. Now, if they wanted to ruin his career, well done, because they've just done it. Look, anything that would include a remnant of the regime is a bad idea. Those people have a gift on how to reinvent themselves. I think that I've explained many times over that this Islamist regime is geared towards export, and they will do everything they can to latch on, reinvent themselves, whether it's in Iran, it's somewhere else. We've seen how in the UK we had to proscribe, thank God for that, the Companion of the Right. That was actually set up by one Qasem Soleimani, because he was planning a contingency plan should the regime be in danger on how to reinvent themselves in the West. Then, ta-da, I give you the Companion of the Right. So now they've been proscribed. So let's not try to put someone else in charge that is completely insane and that would want to become the next megalomaniac in town. Let's try that one. Again, I think that quite frankly, we also have the option of the MEK, which is not an option either, because those people are just as mad. I mean, they want to link Marxism and Islamism. I have my doubts on how that's going to work as well. I think that the best option, the only option that the Iranians have spoken about many times, let's remember that this is their land after all, is Reza Shah. Now, the real question is he willing to come and play? Because so far, I doubt it. I don't know. He has said that he wanted to organize a transition. There is no transition. Power is taken, not given. So if he's listening, Your Majesty, the nation is waiting. Let's do something.
All right, maybe he is listening. I don't know. And those who want to, curious about how is it you came to meet Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, they can look up your history on the internet for that long story. But Relik, I want to bring Israel into the discussion. You heard Prime Minister Netanyahu threatening retaliation against Iran. We know, or I should say actually, there are reports now coming that Prime Minister Netanyahu may be going to Washington over the weekend to meet with President Trump. The timing is pretty auspicious, I would say. What would Israel bring to the game at this point if it did enter, if it did have to respond to an Iranian attack that the U.S., for example, couldn't be? And do you think it would even be wise? I mean, there was a time, for example, during the first Gulf War when the U.S. kept, even when Israel was attacked, the U.S. kept, you remembered well, I'm sure, that the U.S. kept Israel out of responding directly to an attack from Iraq. How do you think it would play out this time?
Well, at the time in 1991, when I was a fighter squadron commander, and we were about 4 hours to take off when this intervention was called off by Prime Minister Shamir. But I think at this point in the game, an Israeli intervention wouldn't really add much. A lot of what Israel contributed to this is information, intelligence. from ground sources and other sources. And this, I'm sure, is being used at this time by the U.S. As far as firepower is concerned, yes, Israel can add about 30%, but it all depends on what are the targets. And there are no targets that Israel can hit and the U.S. cannot hit. So there's really not much operationally that Israel can add to what the U.S. Navy and Air Force are doing at this time. The question is, what will it do to the Gulf states? Are they interested in Israeli intervention? What will it do in Lebanon? Obviously, Israel is interested in putting leverage on Hezbollah, and that's one of the reasons that Israel wants to get an act in the war. I think Prime Minister Netanyahu is not as welcomed in the White House as he was before, as the notion that Netanyahu is manipulating Trump has taken hold, even within the intelligence community in Washington. So I think Netanyahu needs Trump more than Trump needs Netanyahu, all with the taking into account the coming up elections. So Netanyahu is not in a good position to put leverage on Trump at this time, but he's a little bit between the rock and the hard place at this time, with the Israeli public demanding to close some of the open borders or open conflicts with either Lebanon or Syria. And as you just mentioned in the news a while ago, that the United States is putting pressure on Israel to withdraw from Syria and Lebanon. So this is, I would guess, that was the number one on the Netanyahu list. And perhaps adding more firepower to the nuclear program, whatever the outcome of the conflict with Iran will be. So it's a complex situation for Netanyahu, and we'll see, or maybe we won't be able to see how he comes out of the travel next week to Lindsey Graham's funeral.
Right. By the way, I think I'd just like to add, I strongly suspect that the leaks about this so-called Ahmadinejad plot, those leaks perhaps came from some elements in the U.S. intelligence community who feel exactly about Israel the way you just mentioned. But since you did bring up Lebanon and Hezbollah, Catherine, I'm going to go back to you because we hear reports of progress. We hear reports of the Lebanese government trying to get with this pilot program and take on Hezbollah. Again, how far is Iran going to go in order to support Hezbollah for example, if it comes down to that kind of pressure with Israel, would Iran come back and strike Israel for the sake of Hezbollah, as it's done in the past?
Okay, so striking Israel will be a big ask because, and I think we've discussed it before, the Iranian regime has a propensity to only attack you if they feel that they can win, which is why they send the proxies in the first place, because they don't want to have to do the dirty job. I don't think that it worked out for them the first time, the second time, the third time. Whenever they've done it, there's a price to pay. I also know for a fact, and that's because they told me, that there was one man that they were scared about and scared of. And this is not a political statement. It was what they believed. It's Bibi. They do believe that when Bibi said he's going to blow you up, he will. So that in itself is worth something. Are they going to risk everything? Yes, because they have to. They have to. Hezbollah is the only opening that they have onto the Mediterranean. They used to have a corridor, no longer. It's a problem for them. The Houthis, well, the Houthis are starting to not be too happy with the regime because it's costing them more than they bargained for, courtesy of one Mohammed bin Salman just a couple of days ago, if I'm not mistaken. They don't want to be caught in the crossfire. So Hezbollah is really the only proxy that they have left. Hamas doesn't count anymore. Can they lose it? No. Do they need it to reinvent themselves? Yes. Do they have enough bases across, abroad, in Europe, in the West in general? Yes, they do. But if they are perceived as abandoning their only ally right now, they're not going to have many proxies left. So they kind of, broken out in the sense that they had to splinter their proxies across abroad because they have lost everything within the region. It's an issue with them because remember that they have a competition called the Muslim Brotherhood. They don't want to lose to too much, and they are right now. The issue, the mistake that I believe we're making right now, and I'm not talking about Israel, but I'm talking about the West, is that we're misunderstanding that in order to defeat Islamic radicalism, which is a global issue, you need to target the RSJC, Iran, and the Muslim Brotherhood together. Hello, Qatar, we're talking about you.
Right.
So
I'm afraid we're gonna have to. I'm afraid we're gonna have to. We're just running out of time, Catherine. We're gonna have to talk about Qatar another time. There's a lot at play here. I think we're going to be in for a very interesting week next week. Some big decisions are going to have to be made primarily by President Trump. Relik Shafir, Catherine Perez, Shakdam, thank you for joining us on ILTV.
Thank you.